Okay, good evening, everyone. Today is March 7th, 2023. Welcome to the Town of Austening's work session. Please join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, yeah. Okay, so some announcements. First, the Town of Austining is pleased to announce we will be receiving a $30,000 grant from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. There you go. Conservation for Hudson River Beach sanitary study. The Town of Austining will complete a sanitary survey for the beach to identify the sources of pollution. This project seeks to reduce sewage pollution in an effort to open the beach for swimming once the water quality has been restored. This grant opportunity was sought after a study conducted in 2021 by the Hudson Valley Stream Conservancy in partnership with the Town of Austining. It revealed that the water quality would not pass Westchester County Health Department criteria for bacteria at this time. The results pointed to the nearby Sing Sing Kill and to a lesser extent, the county wastewater treatment plant as the sources of primary bacterial sources. This grant will strive to precisely locate sources such as leaking sewage infrastructure and septic systems that run along the Sing Sing Kill and other nearby locations. Hopefully, we will be able to open the beach in the future after we identify some of these challenges. So that's exciting. Moving on. There will be an emergency blood drive due to low blood inventory. Appointments are available on Saturday, March 12th, 2023, from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. at the St. Augustine's Church, and walk-ins are welcome. There'll be an advocacy action day hosted by Westchester and East Putnam Region PTA on Saturday, March 11th, 2023 at the Austining High School, 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m., focusing on mental health, understanding the impact on our youth, and school safety and prevention planning, and the law involved in that. Indian Point will be administering their full volume siren test on March 15th, approximately 10:30 a.m. This is only a test. The OHS theater group will be presenting their play, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. The tickets are free, but donations are graciously accepted. You can join them on March 23rd, 24th, or 25th. And this Thursday at 7 p.m., there's an open mic night at the Sing Sing Kill Brewery. All are welcome. Okay, so on to our work session. First, we're going to have a departmental report by our police chief, Kevin Sylvester.
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. Madam Supervisor, you should have received earlier today monthly reports from me, a little bit back on those, but I sent January and February over today. Change for 2023 is we're going to be doing them monthly rather than just quarterly presentations to the board. So you'll have that in writing. In those reports, you'll see that to date, our department has answered 6,398 calls for service. We do not have a mechanism for separating out calls for service town versus village, but as you'll see through the other statistics that there's basically a ratio of how much of it is attributed to the town. We've issued 1,488 vehicle and traffic summonses in total, 334 of those in the town, 126 arrests in total for all of Austining, 21 of those in the town. In terms of the arrests that have been made in the town, 21 arrests in 2 months, not at all unusual. Almost all of those arrests vehicle and traffic related, and the majority of those vehicle and traffic arrests being for people driving with suspended driver's licenses and registrations. Those are fairly common arrests in most police departments with, some of the license plate reader technology highlights us to those things very quickly. So you'll see a lot of those type of arrests, a couple of DWIs in the town and 1 or 2 other type arrests. Nothing remarkable, all in line with what expectations have been in the past. In terms of community outreach, tomorrow is our next evolution of Feeding Westchester down at the Ossining Police Station. Each month we host a mobile food pantry where folks can come and get groceries. So we make sure that every family has fresh food on the table. Last month we served, I believe, 200 families. So it's a really great program helping lots of folks in the community. Last month we hosted another Chess with Chavez evolution, not only at the library, but also another one in the school. So we're pushing in at the middle school, and we've had officers there spending lunch and recess time with students. Lots to come this summer, but we haven't yet published our calendar, so we'll announce that when the time comes. In terms of training, we're gearing up for our first half firearms qualification over the next couple of weeks. And right now, what we're doing is implementing new technology that came with our budget for Axon. Axon being the vendor that provides us with body-worn cameras, our tasers, and a host of other software solutions. The advantages that we've picked up this year, not only are that every officer will be issued their own individual taser, but upgrades in our body-worn cameras, which now offer us the opportunity to see where our officers are when they're working, so that when we have an emergency, we can appropriately deploy resources, and the desk officer can actually see on a map where the officers are, as well as some accountability software that's really, really great for everybody. We're also this year, we're right now scheduling and putting together our first ever evolution of procedural justice training for every single member of the department. That's a relatively new course put out by the Division of Criminal Justice Services. So that's one that we're exciting to roll out. Last year, we sent 2 officers off to be instructors. So proud to be bringing that to our department. In terms of staffing, handful of changes over the last couple of months since we've last spoke. On December 31st, Detective Bracero retired after 24 years or so of service. You've probably seen him dance out of police headquarters. His video on Instagram has now been viewed 20 million times. He's officially gone viral. And with that, we filled his spot by appointing Bill Gallagher to the detective division. So he moves from patrol to detectives. And in order to fill the vacancies at that point, in early January, we hired Christian Mosqueda and Robert Cregier, who are currently in the police academy, and they are scheduled to graduate sometime in the next couple of months. In December, we graduated officers Martinez, Hazel, Manco, and Marquez from the police academy. They are currently in field training and expected to complete that process sometime in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully they will be full and able and ready police officers over the next couple of weeks. And today is the last day for Officer Giuliano, who's been a great resource to our department for the last few years, but has chosen to pursue options with another department. So he's moving on to Briarcliff, where he'll begin tomorrow. Was a great officer for us. We loved having him, but he's got to do what's best for he and his family. So we're sad to see him go, and we wish him the best. And with that, we'll be speaking with the village board over the next couple of days about some significant hiring. Right now, our department has 6 openings. We're looking to fill all of those. Civil service has certainly been challenging, as most other departments can tell you. That's sort of an issue that's impacting all of policing all over Westchester and New York State. But we're confident we're going to be able to fill those positions. So exciting times to come for the police department. We love change. So we'll see what comes. That's my report for tonight.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
No.
Okay. Well, we'd like to thank you for the work that you do. We're sorry to lose another one to Briarcliff. Now I know why they were smirking at me the other day.
I can't tell you that's why, but it might be.
Well, yeah, it was a police chief that was doing it. So
Okay.
anyway, okay, well, thank you. And I have not had a chance to look at the reports, but I just found them and forwarded them to the board. So thank you for those, and have a great night.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay, next we are going to talk, have a discussion on local law to implement a real property tax exemption for our volunteer emergency service members. We are inviting our lovely comptroller Dale Brennan up to talk to us about some of the numbers and impacts it could potentially have on our community.
Thank you, Town Supervisor Feldman. Good evening, Town Board. So a couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure to go speak with the Village Board. So now this evening, I have the pleasure to come speak to you. So in looking at the active firefighter list, And-
sorry, can I just interrupt you
Oh,
for 1 second?
absolutely.
Councilman Minichia, I believe you're going to recuse yourself from this discussion. So do you want to just go? No, just if you could just sit in the audience for this conversation. Sorry. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you, Christy. So going through the active firefighter list provided between the clerk's office, the assessor's office had touched on it as well. I believe the fire department gets involved, of course, at some point. I did go through each firehouse listing of individuals, identified the assessment currently at the 2022 assessment roll, which is the most current roll, but this, if this is in fact going into effect, it would be on the 2023 assessment roll, 2024 taxes. So essentially, they're proposing a 10% exemption, which basically means for an assessed value, 10% would then be reduced from the total assessment in an exemption, and then the property would be taxed on the net amount.
So so
Um,
the tax exemption itself is not 10%. It would be less than 10%.
Well, it's 10% of the assessment. That's correct. And it's dependent on the tax rate. So in this exercise of going through and identifying actual property values and property owners, because the owner has to reside in the residence, that's their primary residence, in order to receive the exemption, starting with the town outside properties. There were 22 firefighters identified and 3 OVAC, because this would also be extended to them as well. So at a 10% exemption in tax dollars, the amount would be $5,139.10 would be reduced from, let's say, taxable warrant status. But essentially what happens is we would turn that into an assessment. So your assessment reduction actually in the town outside would be $930,850. So what that truly means is going into our 2024 budget, in order for, if everything remained the same in our tax warrant, in our budgets for 2023 to 2024, we would have to make up $930,850 in assessment to come onto our books in order for our tax rate to remain flat. If our assessment goes down, our tax rate goes up because we have a smaller pool to divide that warrant amount across. This same exercise I brought forward to the town general. So that is also going to include any resident that resides not only in the town outside, but also the village of Ossining and the village of Briarcliff. So in that exercise, the tax rate is smaller. So you're looking for, in regards to tax rate for the town outside, special districts are not included. Special districts do not get exemptions. So that means your consolidated sewer, your lighting district, your fire district, refuse recycle, and ambulance district do not get an exemption. It's only going to be your town unincorporated and your highway that would receive it for the town outside. So that consolidated tax rate for 2023, because we don't have one for 2024, is 5.5209 per 1,000 assessed value, because that's how it's calculated. When we go to town general, your tax rate is 0.781235 per 1,000 of assessed value. So even though there's more people, the implications are smaller because the tax rate's smaller. So for the town general, we're looking at a tax warrant reduction of $3,642.57. The assessment reduction at the 10% amount is $4,662,585. But essentially, all for a good cause. So I hope it helps with this information.
Yeah, I want to thank you for doing both sets of math. It was a little unclear at first if we were only going to be doing the exemption for the unincorporated area residents, as the village had done for their village residents, and Briarcliff is considering for their village residents, so that it would be equal across the board. But I felt it was important for us to have the numbers, not only for the exemption for the people we're the primary government for in the unincorporated area, but also to have it for if we did the whole town general as well, which I think honestly would make it better easier for the tax assessing, for the assessment department, for the tax assessor, and also, just give a little more value and a little more to our first responders who give so much. So in my opinion, we should do both. The where we're the primary government, and then for all the second level of the whole. But I'd like to hear what the board has to say.
I have a question. The head count is the same in both examples?
No, in terms of town general, I'm taking the village of Austining, and I didn't just take everybody that is currently getting the $500 exemption, because there are others that would be entitled to it. They just, don't do the paperwork for it. But I'm believing in this instance, the legwork will be done. So in that case, there were 85 people within the village that could have put in for that exemption. So I'm including everybody. So, just trying to do best case, scenario. I forgot how many there were for OVAC in that number.
I think 8.
Maybe another, I know there's 3 in the 10 outside for OVAC, and 22 firefighters. So that's 25. And then, so you have 85 in the village, and there was one that I identified in Briarcliff. That would just be part of the town general.
No, I like it. I think it's a great thing to do for people who give stuff to our community. My only issue with it is that I do think the tax structure is a little regressive in the sense that the higher your assessed value, the more money you stand to save, which I don't think is ideal. And I brought this up originally when we talked about it. I don't know, is there a way where we could cap the assessed value? Like say your house is worth $1 million or more. I don't know that you should necessarily get an exemption.
I can look again at the law. My understanding is that it's based on percentage. So I think I see your point, and that's a good point. But I think that the only discretion, because the reason why the board can do this is because there's a state law that pretty much gives local option to this. And my understanding is that it's based upon percentage. So if you wanted to do it at 5%, but I do think it has to be across the board, but that's something I can certainly look at.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I like the point Greg brought up. Whoops. I like the point Greg brought up. I do think that, all these people that do all this volunteer work for us, they deserve some type of compensation. So I am for the, law in general.
I will say I took a look at some of the details and numbers, and we didn't have anybody that was that much outlandishly higher than anybody else. I think they were all fairly, their primary residences were all fairly. It doesn't apply to if they own two family houses, or it just applies to their primary residence. And I didn't find any multi-million dollar fireman homes, which, is disappointing. You want everybody to, but we can definitely take a closer look at, what that is. I did ask that question, and I think Chrissy was looking at it, but we'll look closer.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Again, I do support it. Just one issue I'd like to look at.
Yeah, it's a set percentage. I'm looking at the law right now.
So now they're going to start buying. But, Matt, any other questions?
Yes, a quick question. I'm not entirely familiar with the process, so I was just curious if, once you pick one of these formulas, is that likely to change, or you evaluate it ongoing and just present reports, updates on it, or?
I think once it's law, right?
So there are certain requirements that the firefighters or the volunteer emergency service workers have to meet in order to be eligible. They have to have 2 years and they have to be certified as an active member, and they have to be a homeowner. So it might not necessarily apply. I don't think it certainly does apply to every firefighter. If you have to meet those certain additional requirements. And that may change, right? People may sell their homes, people may purchase homes. So, those numbers could change over time. How it's implemented is, as Dale mentioned earlier, and we talked a little bit about it last week. They would have to, the firefighter seeking the exemption would have to submit an application to the assessor's office prior to the May 1st taxable status date. And then it would be put in the final assessment roll for the year 2023 to be applied to 2024 taxes. So what those numbers will look like, as Dale mentioned, people need to fill out the application and provide proof of their income and home ownership and all of that information. If they don't do that, then they won't get the exemption. But as Liz mentioned earlier, what's unique about the town as opposed to the villages is that the villages only have their tax, right? The village tax. The town has the unincorporated tax, which is pretty much the equivalent of the village tax, in that it's only for the unincorporated town residents. And that was the first group of people that Dale spoke about. But then there's also the town general that applies to the unincorporated town, the village of Ossining residents, and those portions, the village of Briarcliff Manor, I think 93% of which is in the town of Ossining. There's a small portion that's in the town of Mount Pleasant. But for administration purposes, I think it would be easier for the assessor's office if the assessed value was the same for the unincorporated town as well as town general.
And, the state's intention with this is to make home ownership easier for our first responders and to try to get more people coming in, to be a first responder. A lot of our first responders tend to live a little bit further north because of the cost of housing around here. Maybe some of them will come home, who knows? But it's supposed to be an attraction and retention tool for the departments. Many parts of the state, they are desperate for volunteers. We are very fortunate in Ossining to have the dedicated volunteers that we do, both in the fire department and OVAC, and we are supremely grateful. And I think, this is a very good thing for us to give back and to appreciate them, and they are worth their weight in gold. So I'm definitely for it.
And what's also unique about the town, and I believe we spoke about this, is that the unincorporated town doesn't have its own volunteer fire department, but it does have intermunicipal agreements with both the villages of Ossining and the villages of Briarcliff Manor. So it does make sense to apply those exemptions to them in the town general capacity because they do service the unincorporated town.
It is our ambulance corps.
Yes. But that's ours, right?
And Mid Hudson Ambulance District, but yeah, Ossining Ambulance Corps. Okay, so any more questions, comments?
So just
Okay.
procedurally, the board did open a public hearing on this last week, but we did not, we left it open to be continued at your March 14th meeting because the board hadn't had an opportunity to have a work session discussion about this yet. So the public hearing will be continued next week. What I would recommend doing is that I prepare a resolution to be on the board's agenda, approving it, and then subject to whatever comments we may get, if any, at the public hearing. If the board decides it's appropriate to table it, then you can always do that. But if we don't have the resolution on the agenda, it can't be considered. And as I mentioned last week, because the taxable status date is May 1st, and there's some procedural requirements we have to comply with after the law is adopted, we have to file it with the Secretary of State. The sooner we could start that process, the easier it'll be for the firefighters to get their applications and emergency service workers, including volunteer ambulance, to get their applications in by the May 1st taxable status date, so that all the time and work that the board and the village and Dale and everyone have put into this can be implemented as soon as possible.
Thank you. We'll work on getting that done quickly.
I do have one question. Who is going to be responsible to distribute these forms out to all of the fire and ambulance corps?
So the tax assessor's office will have them. We will make announcements, but honestly, the fire chief and the ambulance chief will more than happily
Okay.
let their departments know.
That's what's good about this type of exemption as opposed to the other exemptions the board's been looking at recently, like the senior exemption and the disability and lower income exemptions, is that, you know, there's everyone's grouped together, right? You have the different firehouses, you have the different fire departments. So I think it's a lot easier to communicate this information than, for instance, the assessor's office is required by law now to do a second mailing to senior citizens, informing them of the exemptions because there isn't that vehicle to communicate it directly to them otherwise.
I mean, I guess we could just pull the fire alarm and they'd all come,
Ah,
but no.
no.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'd like to invite Councilman Manicchio back to the table.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. I really appreciate the work you did on this and the dissecting it and explaining it to us and staying late for us. So thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Okay, next on our agenda, we have our very own Gareth Holcomb from Hudson. All right, he'll say it, Hudson Valley River. Anyway, welcome, Gareth. Introduce yourself, please. He's going to talk about some proposed water quality testing at the Lewis Engle waterfront. Hudson Valley Service. All right.
That's it. You got it. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. My name is Gareth Huffam, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm president of Hudson Valley Stream Conservancy, which is a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit located right here in Ossining. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight about a water quality study for the Lewis Engle Park Beach on the Hudson River. This is a request for continuation of a study begun in 2021. And I'd like to share my screen, and hopefully this will work. Let's try this. Let's see if that is going to work. Yeah, okay, that'll work. Actually, just a second. We'll get that started from the current slide. So let me know when that comes up. Okay, I think that's up, right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, do you see my first slide?
Yes, we
Yes.
do.
Great, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is a photograph taken at the town of Ossining Beach. And I'd like to start with a little background. In 2021, the town of Ossining initiated an exploration of the idea to reopen the beach to permitted public swimming. It hasn't been officially permitted since sometime in the 1960s, although we couldn't find the exact date or the exact circumstances when it was stopped. The Hudson Valley Stream Conservancy conducted 8 weeks of sampling and also completed the data analysis for this in 2021. And in all, we sampled about 80 samples at 3 different sites: at the beach itself, at the final effluent of the wastewater treatment facility, and at the end point of the Sing Sing Kill. All the samples were processed by the Westchester County Certified Laboratories as required by the Westchester County Health Department in order for them to be admissible for any permitting purpose. So the reason we conducted this work is we wanted to see just how close the water quality was to being permissible. It was a big unknown. We know that people do swim there pretty routinely, but we did not know how safe it was. So this was really a first major effort. There have been other efforts. Riverkeeper did some work for a number of years, as did the Ossining High School, which really laid the foundations for this. So going into this coming warm season, we would like to conduct phase 2 of the water quality analysis. We want to further measure the level of bacteria contamination in the water and investigate possible sources of that to determine, just what's most at fault in creating unfavorable conditions there. So I come with a request. And that is that we would like to request up to about $5,000 in funding to pay for the Westchester County laboratory analyses. And 100% of the funding would go to the Westchester County Laboratory in Valhalla. All labor, the sampling labor and the data analysis would come at zero cost to the town. It would be provided by Hudson Valley Stream Conservancy, as well as some of my research students from the State University of New York College at Purchase, Department of Environmental Science, where I'm an adjunct professor. There's another photograph of the beach being enjoyed on a warm day in the summer of 2021, and yet another one cooling off in the hot weather, and here being enjoyed in the cold weather, February, as is done every year with the Sing Sing polar plunge. This shows just generally how the samples are taken. And I'd like to share with you just a little bit of the data we got to give you a sense of what we found. So on the y-axis is the concentration of Enterococcus, which is a type of bacteria. This is the concentration, the number of bacterial colonies per 100 milliliter sample. On the y-axis are the days that we did the sampling. And as you can, the red dashed line represents the State Department of Environmental Conservation threshold below which it needs to be for a safe recreational contact. So you can see in this case, and this is for dry days only. I don't know if you can see my cursor. So for dry days only, most of the sampled days would have passed, would have been just fine for swimming, safe. But there were a few unexplained, very severe spikes. Nevertheless, the geometric mean of all this data is 21.8, and that's lower than the threshold value. So if we were allowed to count only the dry days, it would be permissible for swimming. Unfortunately, we also have to count the wet, rainy days. So this second graph shows the combined data, rainy and dry days. Now you'll notice that the y-axis is about twice as high, twice as large. And here you can see that there were more spikes and more severe spikes. Nevertheless, the geometric mean for all of this data was about 41.2. So that is higher than the 35, which is the threshold. So in combination, it does not pass. However, the good news is that it's pretty darn close. So we actually were quite happy with this result. It was better than we expected. So we feel that clean, safe swimming is within reach if we can do a little bit of the infrastructure work that needs to be done. So this just summarizes what I just told you. Dry weather was okay, wet weather was not okay. But more specifically, the wastewater treatment facility output was usually okay in all but really major storm events. There's one exception to that, where it was not good during a normal dry day. So it happens, but it's infrequent. I give them a lot of credit. The Sing Sing Kill, on the other hand, is a major source of sewage in both wet and dry weather. And the Sing Sing Kill is always 10 to 20 times higher than the New York State standards, and also the Westchester County Department of Health standards. So the Sing Sing Kill is really where some attention needs to be paid. So our next steps, well, the County Health Department reviewed our report, and they stated that even though we did not pass, they would like to see another season of data before they make any judgments. And what we're proposing now is that we repeat essentially the same kind of a study that we did in 2021, this time starting a little bit earlier. We'd like to start at around April 15th so that we can analyze the water before the wastewater treatment plant starts to chlorinate, which usually happens on May 1st. So we'll get some before and after values of that, and then go through to the end of June and maybe a little bit into July. So again, get back to our request for $5,000 or up to $5,000, I should say, for the Westchester County lab analyses. And again, all labor and data analysis would be free to the town. Now, if I had more time, I would love to show you more of our data and explain how we came to really be convinced that the main source of the problem was Sing Sing Kill and not the wastewater treatment facility. But I don't know how much time you want to spend and how many graphs you want to look at. But that is the essential result that we came to. So as you know, as you heard at the beginning of the meeting from Supervisor Feldman, the town did just receive a $30,000 grant from the DEC to do a non-point source beach sanitary survey is what it's called. And so the study the water quality study that I'm requesting now would be preliminary to that and would essentially guide and focus the work that the $30,000 grant would cover, which would be awarded to some appropriate engineering firm as the town would wish. I might also say that that $30,000 grant has a 10% match requirement, and so if this study, the water quality study, were used as a way to fulfill that grant requirement, that match requirement, I'm sorry, then really the $5,000 request really turns into a $2,000 request because $3,000 could be applied directly to that match. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions, and I can try to stop sharing my screen.
Gareth, we are open to seeing a few more slides.
Oh, you are? Okay, great. So this slide essentially shows just an aerial view of the beach, where right there in the middle, where my cursor is pointing. Over to the left, which is south, you can see the wastewater treatment plant here, and its final effluent is piped out about 1,000 meters into the Hudson River, which I have marked here as the effluent point. And I have two arrows because sometimes the tide is coming in and that effluent would be pushed north, and sometimes when the tide is going out, it would be pushed to the south. Just for reference, we have the spray park there, the OBCC and the town boat ramp here. And then way over on the right-hand side, we see the output of the Sing Sing Kill. And it too will be pushed in two different directions depending on the tide. So with the incoming tide, all of the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant would be pushed north and would go contribute to what would be observed and sampled at the beach. And the effluent from the Sing Sing Kill would be pushed north as well. So it would not contribute in any significant way to what's at the beach with the incoming tide. With the outgoing tide, this is reversed. So the sewage treatment plant would no longer be contributing to the beach, but the Sing Sing Kill would be would be contributing the major sources. So I'm going to skip some of these, which are just more data on the sampling. I'll show you the data plotted in a different way, which will be useful. So this is a typical tide cycle. Tides are, the high tides are about 12 hours apart. So it's one high tide there, one high tide there. And so that can be represented just in this way. So if the x-axis is time of day, we have a high tide, then it goes to a low tide, then it goes to a high tide. Okay, so keep that structure of an x-axis in mind. And now we're going to look at some data. So these are, again, the Enterococcus bacteria data counts, this time on rainy days or days where there was rain, significant rain within 48 hours. And you can see that the lower at the left-hand side of the x-axis is the high tide. And as you go to the right toward the center, the tide is coming in. So, and you notice the dotted line is actually a running average. The dashed is a fitting of that, essentially, just to smooth it out. If we had a lot more data, it would look smoother, but the trend is clear. So as you go from high tide to low tide, the bacterial levels go up. So that's as the tide is going out. So you would expect, from high tide to low tide, it's all going south, and water from the Sing Sing Kill is coming in toward the beach, and that's what we're measuring here. Then as the tide comes back in, more of the water from the wastewater treatment facility is contributing to what we'd be sampling on the beach, and the bacterial levels again go down and become far less significant. This is the same kind of data, but only on dry days. It's not quite as smooth, and we don't have as many data points as we wish we had, but it's clear that at high tide values, as it's going from high tide to low tide, again, all the river that is going south, the numbers climb, especially when you get toward the actual low tide. And then again, as the tide comes back in, it starts to drop and is again lowest at high tide. Then for, so between those two graphs, that's what really gives us the indication, beside the actual values of what we measure at the Sing Sing Kill and at the wastewater treatment plant. It's that tidal characteristic that, or tidal dependency, I should say, that makes us convinced that the Sing Sing is the main source. But to look at the absolute numbers, hang on 1 second if you can. So the Enterococcus values and the Sing Sing Kill water itself, these are different, as a function of day. You can now see, look at the values here, 1,000, 2,000, 9,000. And again, the standard of 35 is now way down here near 0. So the Sing Sing Kill is always 10 to 20 to many times higher than it's supposed to be. Yes, Liz.
Okay, so you're pretty sure it's a Sing Sing Kill and not an outfall and or the Croton River?
Yes, so the Croton River is actually quite good. It comes from the reservoir. There have been instances in the past where there were high levels of fecal bacteria measured near the swimming hole at the top of the tidal area of the Croton River. But the river water itself coming down was virtually pristine. And they thought that the higher levels at the swimming hole were from people illegally going to the bathroom in the nearby woods. And there's been a lot of DEC effort to control that situation. And besides these two main sources that we are looking at, there may be other sources. And in fact, Supervisor Feldman has pointed one other potential source out, which we will also be measuring this coming summer if we're given the opportunity to do so. Turbidity, this is another requirement that the health department or another parameter that they require us to look at. And here I'd like to just acknowledge Town of Ossining for initiating the 2021 study, funding the certified laboratory costs. There was an anonymous donor who helped with some of the ancillary funding in memory of Calvin Henninger, who I should say, he was a US Navy competitive diver who grew up here in Crotonville and learned to swim in the Hudson River and the Croton River. So he represented us honorably in the Navy, and a donation was made for this work in his name. Westchester County Wastewater Treatment Facility very graciously allowed us access for a while, and so we got some samples. We're now seeking permission again so that this summer we would have unfettered access for random time sampling, which is an important parameter, and also Riverkeeper and Ossining High School for some very good earlier studies at this beach.
Thank you.
Happy to take any other questions.
Anybody?
Yeah, I just had one question, Gareth. Thank you for the presentation. Just wondering, any samples that have been taken on the King and Sing Sing Kill? Or any other brooks that feed the river?
Yeah, so we took, the Sing Sing, so we took a lot of samples on the Sing Sing Kill. Did you say on other streams like tributaries to the Kill?
Yes.
Yeah, so we there were a lot of there are four major branches actually of the Sing Sing Kill, and in 2016 we Hudson Valley Stream Conservancy got a DEC grant to study the entirety of the Sing Sing Kill and all its branches, and we have a lot of data from that, and we found a number of hotspots, but what we did not find is a smoking gun, like a big broken pipe that's just spewing sewage into the Sing Sing Kill. So we found a number of hotspots, but nothing that was really identifiable as the source of those hotspots. So subsequently, we did some GIS mapping of the sewer lines that are in that area. And in many cases, they go right, the sewer lines follow the Sing Sing Kill and are buried underneath the Sing Sing Kill. And it is entirely possible, though we do not know for sure, that those old pipes are cracked and broken and releasing material from the sewer mains into the stream bed, which would percolate up through the gravel. It's our hope that the work description for the $30,000 DEC grant for that was just announced yesterday by the DEC. We would hope that that would go to an engineering firm that would do dye study tests and what they call I&I tests for to see where water is coming in to pipes through cracks and breaks and where water is going out. There are also some septic systems, but not a lot of them, and they are mostly up in the higher reaches of the Sing Sing Kill. So we expect that we will find, or that engineering study will find broken pipes, but septic systems might contribute as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah.
All right, well, I thank you very much for your thorough explanations. I thank you for all the work you've done over the years. I know you're dedicated to keeping our streams and waterways clear and very much appreciated. And I'm
Thank you.
very grateful that you're teaching the next generation. So
Thank you.
our board will talk about the possibility of funding. And I know I'm leaning toward yes. I think it'll be a good additional tool in our exploration of what's polluting our waters that people seem to want to swim in, no matter whether we want them to or not. So I think it's important to try to get a handle on where the E. coli is coming from and try to deal with that. So I'm for it. I don't know how any of the other board members feel, but we'll talk about that. So thank you so much, Gareth, for
Okay.
coming and presenting to us.
Thank you so much for your consideration and time. Have a good evening.
All
I think we
right,
have Assemblywoman Levenberg.
Bye-bye.
we have her?
Yeah.
Good, perfect timing, Gareth. Okay.
She's been listening to Gareth for a few minutes.
Oh, okay. I was just trying to kind of let Gareth go on. So Assemblywoman Dana Levenberg is going to join us for this next discussion. We are contemplating signing a letter of support for the bill that Senator Peter Harkam and Assemblywoman Dana Levenberg, Senate Bill S 5181, an act to amend the environmental conservation law in relation to prohibiting discharge of any radiological agent into the waters of the state. We all know that Indian Point is contemplating taking the water that is around the spent fuel rods and putting it into the Hudson River. And I know I'm not in favor. So if we can bring Assemblywoman Levenberg, I believe she is on her way back from the airport, but I think we might at least be able to hear her. So are you able to bring her? There you are.
Can you hear me?
There you are.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm in the back of a taxi and I'm sorry that, I was hoping that teeny tiny light would illuminate me, but it's not really. And I'm getting home soon. I don't know if you have anything else you want to talk about. I'll probably be home in about 5 minutes if you want me to try to Zoom from home. Otherwise, I can just tell you, I'm grateful for you taking up this resolution to support our legislation, Senator Harkam and my legislation. And I also just want to thank you. And it's great seeing all of you. I think it's a perfect segue coming from Gareth discussing the cleanliness of the water, specifically for people who would like to swim in the water. And not to mention the fact that obviously Gareth has worked on lots of other areas of import that people use the Hudson for. And for us, one of the key reasons that we're introducing this legislation is because we want to ensure that people are going to continue to feel comfortable using the Hudson River for all of the wonderful assets that it provides. Certainly, as you all know, having worked on this grant, I'm so excited. Congratulations on getting the $30,000 grant to help identify, non-point source impacts on the beach area. I'm so excited about that. But at the same time, as you may know, Holtec is permitted to discharge irradiated water with radionuclides and specifically tritium, even though it's been treated into the Hudson as part of the decommissioning process. And Senator Harkam and I, as well as many advocates, and big thanks to Riverkeeper for helping us draft this legislation, believe that this will have a detrimental impact on the economy of the entire lower Hudson River Valley, and the communities that, you know, go alongside the Hudson or on the Hudson. So we're grateful for your consideration to support our legislation, which would basically, are you saying something?
No.
Supervisor, did you say something? Okay, I'm
I'm
sorry.
listening to you.
I might be, okay, I'm just driving past your house. In any case, I'm grateful because the bill actually would disallow discharge of radiological matter into any of New York water bodies, not just the Hudson, as it currently has been drafted. And I think that all of our water bodies, the more that we know over the many years of the impacts of polluting the Hudson, the more than ever, we need to be clear that we're not contaminating our waters. And knowingly doing that just goes against everything that we've been working on to clean up the Hudson over the many, many years. And I know Supervisor Feldman, as a past Commodore of the Austin Boat Canoe Club, and somebody who spends a lot of time on the river, I think you know better than anybody how vital the river is to all of our communities. And I'm certainly hopeful, and I hope you haven't totally just lost me, because I'm driving down Underhill, and you know that it's not great service. I certainly hope that you'll support our legislation with this resolution, so that we can continue to work on it in both the Senate and the Assembly, and have the governor sign it into law.
Yeah, well, it's not a big lift for me. I mean, obviously, I spent a lot of time at and by the river. I watch a lot of people. There are people, regardless of the DEC.
I'm gonna mute myself for 1 minute. I'm just gonna mute myself for 1 minute, because I'm just gonna get out of the car. Okay.
And then,
So,
then you
yeah,
can get
just
on
like-
it in a brighter fashion. Great. Anyway.
Say it again. Yeah. Hopefully.
So anyway, there are people who use the Hudson River as a food source. There are even people who are farming the clams that are up in Croton Bay, which is very ill-advisable, because the Croton train station is a hotspot. Not necessarily so much as PCBs, but some of the heavy metals used earlier on in, Metro North area. There are a lot of people who swim in the Hudson, and not to mention the fish. So,
Yeah.
and further up, there are people who use it as a drinking water source, and the tide flows both ways. Indian Point is far enough north where it could potentially interfere with the water sources to the north of us.
Right. Now, I just want to, can you guys still hear me? I didn't mute, but I do need to just figure this out. I have to just pay this driver here. It's not an Uber. It's not an Uber. Hold on for 1 second. Let me just deal with this for 1 second. And I just want to say that, that right now the federal government has complete control over radiological matter coming from nuclear power plants. Which is why we are trying to introduce this legislation in the particular form that it is in, which is with can I give you that? Oh, an emphasis on the impact on the economy versus on health. Not to say that it doesn't have health impacts, but we believe that it would be more likely to succeed in court the way that it's currently drafted. So we've had a lot of presentations as part of the Decommissioning Oversight Board to discuss what the alternatives are. And we do know, and to be completely transparent, that that not only nuclear power plants, but in particular that nuclear power plants have been doing this for many years. And there are certainly studies that indicate, thank you very much, thank you, what the impact is on fish and all sorts of other, there's lots of studies that can indicate what the impact is or is not, that can be used. But I think more than anything, the issue of people who are concerned about what the long-term impacts could be on the health of the river, on the health of, you know, the economy. Again, I'm going to just go back to that. More than anything, that's what I think we're focusing on right now with this legislation, so that it can be successful and not be challenged in court against the against what the federal regulations are currently. So I'm gonna almost be in the light now, people. So
Well, I
thank
can
you again.
imagine that less people want their kids, taking sailing lessons if, the water's. good.
Exactly. Kayaking, paddle boarding, all sorts of other things. Fishing, all things that we know. Okay, hello, light. And
Wow.
I'm going to sit with my family in a minute, but I'm just on a meeting right now. So I'm just explaining. I'm on a meeting. Okay. All right.
You
So,
are.
I'm back. Okay.
Welcome home.
Thank you. Can you guys still see me? Because I really don't. I'm so bad at this.
You're sideways. You were good. Now you're good.
Okay,
There
there
you
we go. Okay. So, yeah.
All right. So does anybody have any questions for Assemblywoman Levenberg?
No, I'll support signing the letter. I think it's a great idea. Anything to help clean up everything you explained. So I'm in, and nice to see you again.
Awesome. And so nice to see all of you too. And I'm sorry that I didn't give you a better hello and welcome. And I appreciate all of the good work that you are continuing to do for the town of Austining.
I agree with Angelo 100%. Good to see you, Assemblywoman.
And you, Councilman Meyer, so great to see you as well.
In agreement with everyone else.
I also,
Wonderful.
I can't imagine it's taken this long for a common sense legislation like this to take place, and you have my support.
Wonderful.
Okay, so you have any unanimous support, and we will ask Christie to draft a letter for us in support of the bill.
So sorry, I thought the Assemblywoman had mentioned a resolution. Is there a template resolution?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I thought some of the other communities had been drafting resolutions. I know that the County Board of Legislators did actually draft a resolution. So it is possible that we could get a copy of that to you if you would so desire, either or.
Well, I
Go
mean, we
for it.
could look into it ourselves as well.
Sure.
I thought it was mentioned during the discussion that there was something that was out there.
That Riverkeeper had drafted one, or is that they helped you draft the bill?
No, they helped us draft the bill.
Yeah.
They helped us draft the bill, but there is a resolution that Westchester County Board of Legislators has drafted. So you know, that might be something that you would like to take a look at to do so, or a letter, either or. They're both wonderful and would be very much appreciated.
Well,
Is there a time frame on this?
That is a good question. I would have to say there isn't. However, here's the time frame. Holtec has said that they would most likely get to the point in the process where this water will be discharged by about August. They said that they would be giving 1 month's notice, that they would be willing to give 1 month's notice. They're not required to the Decommissioning Oversight Board, on which I sit. So it could be sooner, it could be later. Obviously, we're trying to get this legislation passed as soon as possible. We're right in the middle of the budget process. I'm not sure that it's going to make its way, but it might. So any support that we could get from as many communities as possible would be, sooner the better, would be appreciated.
Yeah, sorry, I should have framed my question a little bit more specifically. I was basically just trying to make sure the town board had until its legislative session next week, which it sounds like from what you're saying it does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
Well, it is a pleasure to see you, and thank you for the good work you are doing for our community and for the whole state. And I appreciate you multitasking in the way that you always do, and taking the time to jump onto the meeting, even though you were in transit. So thank you so much and we-
Absolutely.
getting
And thank you. Thank you for all the work that you're continuing to do, all the good work for the town. I appreciate that as well.
Thanks, Dana.
Have a great night.
Night.
Bye, Dana.
If I know how to leave. Okay, I'll try.
All right.
Red button.
And with that, that is the end of our work session. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Our next meeting will be our legislative session on March 14th at 7:30 PM. Thank you all and have a great night.